High Chancellor Varuan stood on the command bridge of the Imperial Citadel, his clawed hands gripping the railing as he gazed out into the endless void. The Zelkar Dominion stretched across 1,000 star systems, a tapestry of conquered worlds woven together by the iron will of his ancestors. Varuan was the latest in that line, a towering figure with iridescent scales that shimmered under the bridge's sterile lights. His eyes deep amber slits reflecting the cold precision of a ruler who had never known defeat. Earth had been the last great conquest, centuries ago, when humanity's fledgling empire crumbled under the Dominion's onslaught. The Terrans were extinct, their legends reduced to cautionary tales whispered in the academies. Or so the history hallas proclaimed. But lately, doubt had crept into Varuan's thoughts like a shadow slipping through a crack in the hull. Reports from the border sectors spoke of anomalies FTL, distortions that defied the laws of physics as his scientists understood them. He had dismissed the first few as sensor ghosts, artifacts from the Dominion's vast sensor network straining under the weight of expansion. Yet here he was, summoned from his private chambers in the dead of the night cycle. His robes hastily donned, his mind racing with unspoken fears. "Chancellor," came the voice of his chief sensor officer. Lyrak, a lithe subordinate whose tentacles twitched with nervous energy. "The distortions are intensifying." Coordinates locked. Sector 7 Alpha, near the old Terran frontier. Varuan turned, his presence filling the room like a gravitational pull. The bridge crew, a mix of Zelkar elites and subjugated species, averted their gazes, their workstations humming with suppressed tension. He could sense their unease. It mirrored his own. "Show me," he commanded, his voice a low rumble that echoed through the chamber. A holographic display flickered to life, projecting a swirling vortex of data points. Lines of energy twisted unnaturally, as if space itself was being wrenched apart by an invisible hand. Varuan leaned in, his breath steady but his heart, a triple-chambered organ pounding with a rhythm he hadn't felt since his Ascension Wars. "This isn't a natural phenomenon," he murmured, more to himself than the crew. "It's deliberate." "A signal or a trap?" Lyrak hesitated, his tentacles coiling tighter. "Our probes detected no hostile intent, but there's something else. Residual energy signatures match ancient Terran warp drives. Impossible, of course. Humanity was eradicated." Varuan's scales rippled with irritation. "Impossible? The universe laughs at our certainties, Lyrak. Dispatch a scout fleet. I want eyes on this. Whatever it is." As the orders rippled through the chain of command, Varuan retreated to his observation alcove, a secluded nook overlooking the stars. He sank into the contoured seat, his mind drifting back to the archives he'd studied as a youngling. The Terrans, those fragile bipedal creatures, had fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness. They didn't just defend. They innovated, adapted, turned defeat into legend. His forebears had glassed their homeworld, scattering their remnants to the cosmic winds. Yet whispers persisted in the undercurrents of the Dominion, ghost stories of human survivors, drifting in cryosleep, waiting for revenge. He shook his head, dismissing the thought. Superstition had no place in his empire. Still, as the scout fleet launched sleek destroyers slicing through the void like predators, Varuan felt a chill that no environmental control could warm. He closed his eyes, reaching for the calm that had always served him. In the quiet, a stray memory surfaced, his mentor, an old conqueror, speaking of the stars. "This vastness," the elder had said, "it's not empty chaos. There's an order to it, a quiet intelligence that guides the worthy." Varuan had scoffed then, attributing victory to strategy and might. But now, staring into the abyss, he wondered if there was more some unseen force weaving the threads of fate. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by status updates. The scout fleet approached the anomaly, their comms crackling with routine checks. Then, abruptly, the lead ship's captain's voice cut through. "Chancellor, visual contact." "It's a vessel, massive, bearing Terran markings, United Earth Federation. Hull integrity intact, but scans show no life signs. It's adrift, power minimal." Varun surged to his feet, the bridge crew snapping to attention. "Adrift? Approach with caution. Boarding parties ready. I want that ship dissected." The holodisplay shifted to real-time feed from the scouts. There it was, a colossal warship, its hull scarred by eons of cosmic debris, yet unbroken. Angular lines, human design efficient, brutal. The nameplate, faded but legible. UEF Odyssey. Varun's mind reeled. That ship class had been mythologized in Dominion war logs, the last stand of humanity's fleet, vaporized in the Battle of Sol. How could it be here, intact, after centuries? As the boarding shuttles detached, docking clamps engaging, a low hum filled the bridge. Alarms blared energy spikes from the ghost ship. "Pull back!" Varun barked, but it was too late. The Odyssey's systems flickered to life, lights blooming along its spine like awakening eyes. The captain's voice turned frantic. "It's powering up." Weapons hot, static swallowed the transmission. The holodisplay showed the impossible, the Odyssey's turrets swiveling, energy beams lancing out with surgical precision. One scout destroyer erupted in flames, its shields crumpling like foil. Another veered away, only to be caught in a tractor beam and crushed against the ghost ship's hull. Varun's claws dug into the railing, splintering the material. "Mobilize the border armada. All ships to intercept." Chaos erupted on the bridge, orders flying, screens flashing red. But beneath the panic, Varun felt a spark of something else. Awe. This wasn't random malfunction. The ship moved with purpose, evading scans, countering tactics as if anticipating them. Human ingenuity, long buried, rising from the grave dot as the armada warped in. A broadcast pierced the comms, a melody, ancient and haunting. Earth's forgotten anthem, the star-spangled banner, warped by time but unmistakable. Varun froze, the notes stirring a primal fear. The crew exchanged glances, whispers of ghosts rippling through the ranks. The Odyssey charged forward, a lone predator against a wolf pack. Beams clashed, explosions blooming like fireworks in the void. One by one, Dominion ships fell outmaneuvered, outgunned by technology that shouldn't exist. Varun watched, his empire's might crumbling before a relic. In the midst of the carnage, he whispered to the stars, "This can't be coincidence. Someone orchestrated this." But as the last scout signal faded, the Odyssey vanished into a warp rift, leaving only debris and silence. And in that silence, Varun heard the echo of the anthem. A promise of return. High Chancellor Varun did not sleep. The command bridge of the Imperial Citadel had become his vigil, its vast curved viewport framing the endless black like a judgment. The debris field from the scout fleet still drifted in lazy spirals across the holodisplay's twisted alloy. Frozen plasma blooms, the occasional flash of a dying reactor. Every fragment was a silent accusation. He had ordered those ships forward. He had watched them burn. Now the bridge crew moved in hushed efficiency, speaking only when necessary, their voices low, as if the ghost ship might still be listening. Varun stood alone at the central dais, claws resting on the cool metal rail, amber eyes fixed on the replay of the final moments. The UEF Odyssey, ancient, impossible, had carved through his destroyers with the calm precision of a surgeon. One moment the scouts were closing for boarding. The next they were gone. And through it all, that anthem. Human voices, defiant and proud, rising over the crackle of dying comes. "Replay the broadcast," Varun said quietly. Lirak hesitated, tentacles curling. "Chancellor, we've analyzed it a dozen times. Again." The anthem filled the bridge once more, tinny through old compression, yet unmistakable. The crew stiffened. Some averted their eyes. Zelkar did not sing of banners or spacious skies. They sang of conquest, of the Dominion's eternal reach. This was different, raw, almost fragile, yet it carried a weight that made the vast chamber feel small. Varun closed his eyes and let the music wash over him. He had studied human culture as a young strategist, dissecting it the way one studies a venomous insect, with clinical fascination and healthy distance. Their art had always unsettled him. Where Zelkar epic celebrated the triumph of the strong, human stories lingered on loss, on sacrifice, on the stubborn refusal to yield even when defeat was certain. They called it hope. He had called it delusion. Now delusion had returned with railguns and warp signatures. The anthem ended. Silence rushed back in. "Chancellor," Krell's voice came from the strategy alcove, gravel rough as always. The old advisor approached, data slate in hand. "The core fleet will arrive in 6 cycles. We can have 3 full battle groups in defensive formation around the capital by then." Varun nodded absently. "And the archives?" Krell's obsidian eyes flickered. "We pulled everything on the Odyssey class. The humans launched 12 during their final evacuation. 11 were confirmed destroyed. The 12th Odyssey herself was listed as lost with all hands after a blind warp jump from the Soul Graveyard. No wreckage ever recovered. Until now, Varun murmured. He dismissed the bridge crew for the night cycle and retreated to the restricted archives deep within the Citadel's armored core. The chamber was cold, lit only by the soft glow of data crystals suspended in stasis fields. Varun moved between them like a penitent, pulling records he hadn't touched since his ascension trials. Hours bled away. He watched grainy footage of Earth's last days, human cities burning under orbital bombardment, yet their fleets still fighting, still launching desperate strikes. He read intercepted transmissions, mothers singing lullabies to children in bunkers, commanders quoting ancient texts as their ships died, soldiers laughing in the face of annihilation. One fragment stayed with him, a final log from the Odyssey's captain, a man named Elias Reyes. "If you're hearing this, the Dominion thinks us finished. They're wrong. We're going far farther than they can follow. Cryo-sleep, experimental drives, whatever it takes. We'll sleep for centuries if we must. But we'll wake. And when we do, we'll remember. Not for vengeance alone. For our children. For the idea that no empire lasts forever. God willing, we'll see you again." Varun paused the recording. God willing. The phrase appeared again and again in human logs, spoken with casual certainty, as if the universe itself might listen. Zelkar philosophy acknowledged no such personal force, only the cold mathematics of power and survival. Yet watching Reyes' tired, resolute face, Varun felt something shift inside him. A crack in the certainty he had worn like armor his entire life. He left the archives as the artificial dawn cycle began, corridors bathed in pale gold light. In the lift to his private quarters, he caught his reflection in the polished walls, scales dulled with fatigue, eyes haunted. For the first time in decades, Varun felt small. Elara was waiting outside his door, his daughter, barely past her majority, her softer violet scales still carrying the sheen of youth. She had inherited his height but none of his coldness. Her eyes held the dangerous curiosity that worried him most. "Father," she said softly, falling into step beside him. "The Citadel is whispering. They say the humans have returned as spirits, that their gods sent them." Varun stopped, turning to her. "And what do you say?" She hesitated, glancing down the empty corridor. "I say, if they can come back after all this time, maybe the stories about them were true. That they never really surrender." He reached out, brushing a claw gently along her cheek ridge, an affection he rarely allowed himself. "Stories are weapons, Elara. The humans were masters of them. Do not let ghosts frighten you." But as he entered his quarters and sealed the door, Varun wondered which of them was truly frightened, alone again. He activated a private holodisplay and pulled up the sensor logs from the engagement. Something had nagged at him since the battle. He isolated the Odyssey's energy signature, ran it through every filter the Dominion possessed. The results made his breath catch. The power curve wasn't just advanced, it was impossible. Human technology from that era should have decayed, failed, drifted cold. Yet the Odyssey's reactors had spiked to levels that defied entropy itself. As if preserved, maintained, waiting, Varun leaned back, staring at the ceiling's starfield projection. "This can't all be accident," he whispered to the empty room. "Too precise. Too timed." A soft alert chime knew distortion signatures, multiple vectors, closing on inner systems. Not one ship this time, dozens. He straightened, the weight of command settling back onto his shoulders like an old cloak. Fear lingered, but beneath it now burned something sharper. Curiosity, perhaps even respect. The humans had planned this across centuries. They had trusted in something larger than themselves to bring them home. Varun opened a fleet-wide channel. His voice, when it came, was steady iron. "All battle groups to combat stations. The ghosts are coming again. This time, we meet them with eyes open." He killed the channel and walked to the viewport. Beyond the shields, the stars wheeled in their ancient dance vast, indifferent, yet suddenly alive with meaning. And somewhere in the dark, across the widening ripple of warp signatures, the forgotten anthem began to rise once more. High Chancellor Varun stood on the observation deck of his personal cruiser. The Dominion's wrath as it dropped out of warp on the edge of the forbidden sector. Behind him, an escort of 6 heavy destroyers fanned out in defensive formation, their running lights faint against the bruised purple of the nebula ahead. No Zelkar ship had ventured this deep into the old Terran frontier in over a century. The region had been declared quarantined after the final bombardment, radiation hazards, unstable warplanes, and the lingering superstition that human ghosts haunted the ruins. Varun felt none of that superstition until now. The nebula glowed with ionized gas, tendrils of violet and crimson swirling like slow-motion smoke. At its heart lay the anomaly site where the Odyssey had first appeared. Sensors painted an empty picture. No ships, no stations, only the faint echo of the warp distortions that had haunted his empire for weeks. Yet the silence felt watchful. "Chancellor," Captain Draven's voice came over the private channel, low and respectful. "Scans remain negative. Your orders?" Varun did not answer immediately. He stared into the cloud, searching for something he could not name. Ever since the second wave of attacks, dozens of Odyssey signatures striking simultaneously across 3 sectors, he had felt the conflict shifting from military threat to something deeper, more personal. The ghosts were not simply destroying ships. They were speaking, warning, reminding. "Launch probes," he said finally. "Full spectrum. I want to see what they see." Golden motes detached from the destroyers, hundreds of autonomous drones streaking into the nebula like fireflies. Their feeds bloomed across the cruiser's main holodisplay, painting the interior in ghostly blues and greens. Varun watched debris fields drift past, fragments of ancient human satellites, shattered Zelkar orbital forts, the skeletal remains of colony arcs caught mid-evacuation centuries ago. Time had frozen the graveyard in perfect stillness. Then the probes reached the center. A ripple passed through the cloud, subtle as breath on glass. Every feed glitched for a single frame, and when clarity returned, the Odyssey was there. Not an illusion, not a drone. The original ship, scarred hull catching the nebula's glow like old steel under moonlight. It hung motionless, weapons cold, as if waiting. Varun's claws tightened on the rail. "Open a channel." Narrow beam, direct to that vessel. Draven obeyed. Static hissed, then cleared. For a long moment, Nothing. Then a voicemail, human, calm as deep water. High Chancellor Varun. You came alone. That was brave. The words struck like a physical blow. Varun had expected automated systems, perhaps a pre-recorded message. Not conversation. Who am I speaking to? He demanded, keeping his tone level. A remnant. Call me Elias Reyes, if names still matter to you. Captain of the Odyssey, once upon a time. Varun's mind raced through the archives. Reyes, the final log, the man who had promised return. You're dead. Your ship was lost. Lost, Reyes repeated, the word carrying a faint, tired smile. Not destroyed. We jumped blind, farther than any human drive was meant to go. Time stretched. Cryosleep held most of us. The ship's AI held the rest. We slept a long time, Chancellor. Long enough for your empire to forget what it buried. Varun glanced at the tactical display. His escorts were holding position, weapons locked but silent. No aggression from the Odyssey, yet. Why reveal yourselves now? He asked. Reyes was quiet for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of centuries. Because we saw what your dominion became. We watched from the dark probes, long-range scans, messages carried by traitors who never knew what they carried. Worlds stripped bare. Species broken. Children taught that mercy is weakness. We slept to survive. We woke to remember why survival matters. Varun felt heat rise along his neck ridges. You speak of morality to the architect of galactic order? Your species tore itself apart with wars long before we arrived. True, Reyes admitted without defensiveness. We were flawed, violent, terrifyingly creative in our cruelty. But we also learned. Slowly, painfully, we wrote laws against our worst impulses. We reached for the stars not just to conquer, but to become better than our past. You glassed our cradle before we could prove it. The human's words landed with quiet force. Varun thought of Alara, her questions, her fear, and felt the internal fracture widen. He had always believed strength was the only truth. Now strength itself seemed to be speaking against him. What do you want? He asked at last. Not vengeance, Reyes said. Not anymore. We've had centuries to let that poison cool. We want you to see. To remember that empires built on erasure eventually erase themselves. The Odyssey you've been fighting? Not the real ship, drones, echoes, controlled from here. Every time we struck, we pulled punches. We could have taken your capital weeks ago. Varun's blood chilled. Tactical readouts confirmed it. The ghost fleets had always disengaged before decisive victory. They had herded, not annihilated. Why spare us? Reyes' voice softened. Because someone once spared us. Long before your fleets arrived, humanity stood on the brink of self-destruction, nuclear fires, ideological madness. We stepped back. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But enough. We chose something larger than survival. We called it grace. The channel carried another sound, then faint, almost lost beneath the static. Voices, human voices layered in quiet harmony. A prayer, Varun realized. Not triumphant or vengeful, simple, trusting. Our Father, who art in heaven. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. The words stirred something ancient in Varun, a memory from his mentor's teachings about cosmic order, balance, consequence, mercy woven into the fabric of existence. He found his voice. You believe your God orchestrated this? Preserved you across centuries for judgment? I believe, Reyes said carefully, that the universe is not indifferent. That patterns repeat until we learn. That something, call it God, call it the quiet intelligence behind creation, breathes meaning into chaos. We trusted that when we jumped. We're still trusting it now. The Odyssey's running lights brightened. illuminating scars Varun recognized from historical records damage from the Battle of Seoul. Never repaired. Proof. One more thing, Rias continued. We're not alone out here. Other arcs made the jump. Some failed. Some succeeded. They're waking too. Not all carry the same message we do. Some slept in rage. If your Dominion keeps reaching for absolute control, you'll meet them next. And they will not pull punches. A warning, delivered without threat, only sorrow. Varun stared at the ancient warship, feeling the weight of decisions not yet made. For the first time in his life, he wondered if ruling required more than power. The channel closed from the Odyssey's side. The ship did not fire, did not flee. It simply powered down, becoming a silent monument in the nebula's heart. Draven's voice returned, tense. Chancellor, orders? Varun watched the dark vessel a moment longer, recall the probes. Set course for the Citadel, and prepare a secure channel to the full council. There are things they need to hear. As the cruiser turned away, Varun remained at the viewport. The nebula swirled, hiding the Odyssey once more. But its presence lingered, patient as starlight, and in the quiet of his soul, Varun whispered to the vastness beyond the hull, if there truly is a greater order, show me the next step. Far behind, unseen, the Odyssey's lights flickered once, a gentle acknowledgement. Then the nebula closed. And the ghost waited again. High Chancellor. Varun stepped onto the command dais of the Dominion's Wrath as the cruiser re-entered the capital system. The journey back from the nebula had been silent. No pursuit. No further distortions, only the weight of Captain Reyes' words pressing against his thoughts like an unseen gravity well. He had not shared the full conversation with his crew. Not yet. Some truths were too sharp to wield carelessly. The Citadel loomed ahead, its massive ringed structure catching the light of the system's blue-white sun. Defensive fleets patrolled in tight, nervous grids, thousands of ships redeployed from across the Empire at his urgent command. They looked invincible from a distance. Up close, Varun knew better. He had seen what one human ship could do when it chose restraint. Chancellor, Draven greeted him on the bridge, saluting crisply. The Council awaits your debriefing. Rumors are spreading faster than we can suppress them. Varun nodded, removing his cloak and handing it to an attendant. Let them spread a little longer. Fear keeps people alert. He moved to the tactical holotable where Krell and Lyrak already stood, faces grim. Projected above the table was a strategic map of the Dominion core worlds in steady gold. Border sectors flickering amber with unrest. Red markers pulsed at a dozen points. Recent Odyssey strikes, precise and surgical. Never enough to cripple, but always enough to humiliate. They hit 3 supply convoys simultaneously last cycle. Krell reported. No losses of life on our side. They disabled engines, tractor-beamed the cargo into open space, and vanished. The crews were left drifting with full life support. Lyrak added quietly, each derelict carried the same broadcast on loop. The human anthem. Followed by a single sentence in Zelkar standard, remember mercy. Varun felt the words like a brand. Remember mercy. Reyes had spoken of grace. Now his ghosts were teaching it with actions. He leaned over the map, claws tracing the pattern of attacks. They're drawing us outward, thinning the core defenses. Krell's eyes narrowed. A prelude to invasion? No, Varun said. A prelude to choice. The advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Varun straightened. We are going to force their hand. Assemble the Grand Armada, every capital ship, every carrier wing. We return to the nebula. This time we find the source. Draven hesitated. Chancellor, if the Odyssey is only the vanguard, then we meet the vanguard in demand terms. Varun cut in. I will not rule an empire that cowers from shadows. Orders flew across the Citadel. Shipyards burned with activity. Within 2 cycles, the largest fleet the Dominion had mustered since the conquest of Earth gathered in high orbit, over 3,000 vessels. From sleek interceptors to kilometer-long dreadnoughts bristling with spinal lances. Varun transferred his flag to the super dreadnought Indomitable, a city-sized fortress of alloy and fury. As the armada formed up, Varun visited Ilara one last time. She met him in the Botanical Dome, a rare green space amid the Citadel's steel. Flowers from 100 conquered worlds bloomed under artificial sunlight. "You're leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. "I must see this through." Her violet scales caught the light as she stepped closer. "Father, I accessed the restricted logs. I heard the transmission from the nebula. The human spoke to you. What did he say that you're not telling the council?" Varun studied her, his daughter, sharp and fearless. He had shielded her from the worst of rule, but she had inherited his mind. "He reminded me," Varun said slowly, "that strength without wisdom becomes tyranny. And tyranny invites judgment." Ilara's eyes widened. "You believe him?" "I believe consequences are real," he replied. "Whether shaped by gods or by the choices we make in their silence." He embraced her briefly, an awkward gesture between armored formality and raw feeling. "If I do not return, you will rule better than I have." She held him tighter. "Come back and rule better yourself." The armada jumped in staggered waves, space folding around them like closing petals. When they emerged at the nebula's edge, the cloud hung before them, beautiful, treacherous, alive with hidden eyes. Varun stood on the Indomitable's bridge, surrounded by his admirals. "All ships, advance in assault delta formation. Weapons hold until my command." They plunged into the glowing haze. Sensors screamed immediately, hundreds of Odyssey signatures blooming like fireflies. But these were different, smaller, faster, unmistakably drones. They swarmed the fleet's flanks, not firing, only matching velocity, escorting. "Chancellor," Lirok's voice crackled from the sensor pit. "They're guiding us." Clearing a path deeper in. Varun's heart pounded. "Follow." Deeper they went, until the nebula parted like curtains and revealed the heart, a massive shadow against the glow. Not a ship. A station human design, ancient yet intact, ringed with docking arms and bristling with dormant weapons. At its center, the true Odyssey rested in a cradle of light. No defenses rose to meet them. No challenge, only a single open channel. Ria's voice returned, calm as ever. "Welcome, Chancellor. You brought your empire's might to speak with ghosts." That took courage. Varun glanced at his admirals' faces, pale, claws gripping consoles. He opened the fleet-wide channel so all could hear. "Captain Reyes, you have our attention." A pause. Then, "We have no desire for your destruction. Only for your memory. Dock the Indomitable. Come aboard alone. See what you came to see." The invitation hung in the silence. Krell whispered urgently, "It's a trap." Varun considered the drone escort, the open bays, the lack of hostility. "No," he said. "It's a test." He turned to Draven. "You have command. If I do not return in 6 hours, withdraw and fortify the core worlds. Do not retaliate." Draven saluted, eyes wide with unspoken fear. Varun boarded a shuttle, unarmed save for the sidearm protocol demanded. As he crossed the void toward the station, he looked back once at the vast armada, his life's work, arrayed in perfect order, and felt strangely light. The shuttle settled into the station's cavernous bay. Atmosphere cycled. The ramp lowered. Waiting for him was a single figure, a man in an ancient uniform, gray at the temples, eyes carrying the weight of centuries. Elias Reyes, flesh and blood, not hologram. Behind him, more humans emerged from the shadows, dozens, then hundreds. Not soldiers, families, children born in the long sleep. Engineers, teachers. They watched Varun with quiet curiosity, not hatred. Reyes extended a hand human fashion. "Welcome to the Ark of Remembrance, Chancellor. You're the first Zelkar to stand here without chains." Varun did not take the hand. Not yet. He looked past Reyes to the people, living proof that humanity had endured, not as vengeful specters, but as patient gardeners of hope. And in that moment, staring at children who had never known Earth yet carried its light in their eyes, Varun felt the first true crack in the foundation of everything he had built. Reyes smiled faintly, as if reading his thoughts. "Come, there is much to show you. And perhaps, much to forgive." Far outside, the Armada waited in tense silence. Weapons powered down for the first time in living memory. And somewhere deeper in the nebula, unseen engines began to stir other arcs, other choices. Waking to the same ancient call, High Chancellor Varun stepped through the airlock and into the Ark of Remembrance. The corridor beyond was wide, softly lit, and achingly human curved bulkheads painted in muted earth tones, floors of composite that gave faintly under his clawed feet. The air carried unfamiliar scents, recycled oxygen laced with something green and growing, the faint tang of coffee, the warmth of bodies that had lived here for generations. It was nothing like the sterile precision of Zelkar vessels. It felt lived in. Elias Reyes walked beside him, unhurried, hands clasped behind his back. No guards flanked them. No weapons were visible. Only the quiet shuffle of human feet as people paused inside passages to watch the towering Zelkar Chancellor pass. Children peered from doorways, wide-eyed but unafraid. Adults nodded, some wary, some curious, a few with something that might have been pity. Varun's scales prickled with the strangeness of it. He had boarded enemy vessels before, always under heavy escort, always amid the stench of fear and blood. This was different. He felt exposed, yet not threatened. "You expected chains," Reyes said quietly, as if reading his thoughts. "Or a firing squad." "I expected resistance," Varun admitted. His voice echoed strangely in the human acoustics. Reyes smiled without humor. "We resisted for centuries by simply refusing to die. That fight's over." They walked deeper. Open chambers branched off the main corridor, hydroponic gardens under golden grow lights. Classrooms where teenagers glanced up from holographic lessons. A medical bay where an elderly woman tended a newborn. Everywhere, the same quiet industry. People rebuilding a civilization in the dark between stars. Varun stopped at a viewport overlooking the main hangar. Below, the true Odyssey rested in its cradle. Engineers in coveralls swarming over her hull like ants restoring an ancient monument. Drones ferried parts. Welding torches sparked in graceful arcs. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" Reyes said, joining him. "Older than every living soul aboard, yet she carried us here. We keep her flying the way your people keep trophies polished." Varun studied the warship's scars. "You could have built a new fleet. Conquered us while we slept on our victories." "We considered it," Reyes said. "Some argued for it. The angry ones. The ones who woke screaming from cryo-dreams of earth burning." He turned to face Varun fully. "But vengeance is a fire that consumes the hand holding the torch. We chose something harder, remembrance, witness." They continued to a central atrium, a vast circular space with a transparent dome overhead. The nebula's colors swirled above like living auroras. In the center stood a simple memorial, a slab of earth granite, salvaged somehow, etched with names. Thousands upon thousands. Varun recognized none, yet the weight pressed on him all the same. Around the slab, people had gathered in loose groups, some sitting, some standing, a few kneeling. A young man with dark skin and close-cropped hair strummed a stringed instrument Varun's translator, identified as a guitar. Others joined in quiet song, not the anthem this time, but something slower. Aching. Reyes gestured to an empty bench. "Sit, if you wish." Varun remained standing. You brought me here to shame me. No, Reyes said. To let you see what your empire tried to erase. Not just lives, continuity, stories, faith, the belief that tomorrow can be better than today. A woman approached mid-40s, gray streaking her braided hair, carrying the calm authority of leadership. Reyes introduced her as Dr. Amara Singh, chief archivist and de facto civilian governor. She studied Varun with steady brown eyes. My great-grandparents died on Earth. I was born here, in the long dark. I've never seen a blue sky that wasn't simulated. Yet I know what rain smells like because my mother described it every night before sleep. Her voice held no accusation, only fact. That is what you almost ended. Not a species. A chain of memory. Varun felt the internal conflict sharpen like a blade. He had justified the conquest of Earth as necessary humanity's expansionist wars, their weapons of mass destruction, their refusal to submit to Dominion order. Clean, strategic logic. Now logic faltered against living faces. Why show me mercy? He asked, the question raw. After everything. Singh answered. Because someone showed us mercy once. Long before your fleets came, we were on the brink of destroying ourselves. Nations, ideologies, religions all ready to burn the world. Then we stopped. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But enough people chose restraint. Enough believed in something larger than revenge. We passed that fragile gift forward. Now we offer it to you. Reyes added softly, the other arcs aren't so patient. 3 more have woken in the outer voids. Their captains slept in rage. They're building real fleets. If your Dominion answers with annihilation, they'll answer back in kind. Billions will die again. Varun's claws flexed. You threaten me with war if I choose peace? No, Reyes said. We warn you that peace is the only way to prevent one. A child no more than 6 with freckles and untamed curls tugged at Reyes's sleeve. The captain knelt. The girl whispered something, then held out a small drawing, crayon stars and a stick figure Zelkar. Shaking hands with a stick figure human, Reyes took it gently and passed it to Varun. The Chancellor stared at the childish scrawl. Something cracked open inside him, grief, perhaps, or recognition. He had never allowed himself children beyond Alara, fearing the vulnerability. Now a human child offered trust without hesitation. He folded the drawing carefully and tucked it inside his tunic, over his heart. I need time, he said at last. My people. They fear you. They will demand blood. Reyes nodded. Then go back and teach them something harder than fear. They escorted him to a small observation lounge. Through the viewport, Varun watched his armada waiting beyond the nebula's edge, thousands of ships, weapons still cold by his order. Reyes left him alone with a simple meal, bread, fruit, water. Human food. Varun ate slowly, tasting flavors his palate had no names for. Hours passed. He thought of Ilara, of the Council hungry for victory, of worlds that would revolt if he returned speaking of reconciliation. He thought of the memorial names, endless as stars. Finally, he activated the secure comm unit Reyes had provided. Draven's face appeared, strained with worry. Chancellor, you're alive. For now, Varun said. Prepare a secure channel to the full council. Encrypted, highest priority. I have a proposal. Draven's eyes widened, but he saluted. At once. Varun closed the channel and stared out at the nebula. The ark's lights reflected softly on the glass. Somewhere inside, that guitar still played, faint but persistent. He whispered to the empty room, to the stars, to whatever quiet intelligence might be listening. If this is the order behind creation, help me choose rightly. Behind him, the door opened. Reyes entered with a data crystal. One more thing before you go, the human said. Coordinates. To the other arcs. The angry ones. If talks fail, you'll need to know where the storm is gathering. Varun took the crystal, their fingers brushing scales against skin. Conqueror against survivor. Reyes met his gaze. Whatever you decide, Chancellor, history will remember this moment. Not the battle, this. Varun nodded once. The weight of empires on his shoulders. As his shuttle lifted away from the ark. The nebula parted just enough to reveal the waiting armada, silent, uncertain, poised on the edge of transformation or destruction, and deeper in the void. Engines that had slept in fury began to burn hotter. Sensing the hour of reckoning drawing near, High Chancellor, Varun's shuttle emerged from the nebula like a lone spark drifting out of a dying fire. The Grand Armada waited in perfect silence, weapons still cold, formation unbroken. Every bridge officer across 3,000 ships watched the small craft approach the indomitable, breath held for the verdict of history. Varun stepped onto his flagship's deck unescorted. Draven and Krell met him at the airlock, eyes searching for wounds, for triumph, for any sign of what had transpired. They found only a quiet that felt deeper than vacuum. "Chancellor," Draven said, voice tight. "The fleet stands ready." Varun nodded once. "Open the secure council channel. All admirals, all sector governors. Full encryption. No recordings." The hall of conference bloomed around the Indomitable's war room, an immense circle of projected faces, hardened Zelkar commanders, subjugated viceroys, intelligence chiefs. Hundreds of eyes fixed on him. He felt their hunger for victory, their fear disguised as rage. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he placed the child's crayon drawing on the central table where every camera could see it. Two stick figures, one scaled, one smooth-skinned, holding hands beneath clumsy stars. "This," Varun said, voice carrying across the void, "is what I brought back from the human ark." Murmurs rippled through the projections. Krell's face darkened. "They live," Varun continued. "Not as ghosts. As families. Children born in exile who have never seen a sun that was not filtered through nebula gas. They preserved themselves for centuries, not to conquer us, but to remind us." A sector governor from the outer rim snarled. "Remind us of weakness? They struck our ships, humiliated our fleets. They could have destroyed the capital," Varun cut in, sharp as a blade. "They chose not to. Every raid was measured. Every life spared when it could have been taken. They offered us a mirror, not a war." The chamber erupted shouts of treason, demands for immediate bombardment, calls for Varun's removal. He let the storm rage for a full minute, standing motionless, amber eyes steady. Then he raised one clawed hand. Silence fell like a guillotine. "I have seen their memorial," he said quietly. "Names, millions, civilians, children, entire cities reduced to glass by our orbitals. I stood where our ancestors ordered those strikes. And I felt," his voice caught, "the barest fracture. I felt the weight of it." Krell stepped forward, obsidian eyes blazing. "Chancellor, with respect, this is sentiment. The Dominion was forged in necessity. Humanity would have done the same to us given the chance." "Perhaps," Varun replied. "But they did not. When they held back, they chose differently. And now other human arcs wake ones that did not choose restraint. If we answer remembrance with annihilation, we will face those who slept in rage. And we will lose." He transmitted the coordinates Reyes had given him. Red markers bloomed across the strategic map, 3 massive signatures in the deep void, power curves climbing exponentially. "These are building real fleets," Varun said. "Not drones. Not warnings. Warships crewed by survivors who dream only of Saul's burning skies. If we strike the Ark of Remembrance, we invite that storm." Silence stretched, colder than space. Finally, a younger admiral from the core world spoke, voice uncertain. "What do you propose, Chancellor?" Varun drew a slow breath. "A summit. Neutral ground. Open channels. We meet the humans as equals and negotiate terms, reparations, demilitarized zones, shared knowledge. We begin the long work of ending what our forebears started. Outrage exploded anew. Accusations of cowardice, of betrayal. One governor severed his feet in protest. Others followed, but not all. A viceroy from a subjugated avian species, long resentful of Zelkar rule, spoke next. If the humans return with mercy, perhaps the Dominion can learn it too. Or we will all burn. Slowly, fracture lines appeared. Some nodded. Some remained stone-faced. Many simply stared, calculating survival. Varun ended the transmission. The projections went out, leaving only his bridge crew. Krull approached, voice low. You have split the Empire, Chancellor. Civil war brews. Varun looked at the crayon drawing again. Better a split empire that lives than a united one that dies in fire. He turned to Draven. Set course for the Citadel. And prepare a broadcast, open frequencies, all languages. I will speak to every citizen directly. Draven saluted, hesitation fading into resolve. As the Armada began its long warp home, Varun retreated to his quarters. He knelt, not in the Zelkar posture of dominance, but lower, forehead nearly touching the deck. The words came unbidden, clumsy on his tongue. If there is a greater order, if mercy is woven into the stars themselves, let it guide us now. Not for my glory, for Alara's future, for all futures. He rose, feeling neither absolved nor condemned, only changed. Hours later, the Citadel's arrays flared to life. Varun's image appeared on every screen across the Dominion. Homeworlds, colonies, outposts, even pirate stations tapping the feed. My people, he began, voice steady but raw. We have lived by strength alone. Today I tell you, strength has limits. Beyond them lies something harder and perhaps greater. The humans we thought extinct have returned, not as conquerors, but as witnesses. They offer us a choice: continue the cycle of erasure or break it. He spoke of the Ark, of children who forgave without knowing why, of the coming storm if wisdom failed. I do not command you to trust them. I ask you to trust that survival sometimes demands courage greater than war. The broadcast ended. In its wake, the Dominion trembled. Unconquered worlds, subdued populations gathered in streets, whispering of hope long buried. On Zelkar core worlds, riots sparked, loyalists clashing with those who heard something new in their chancellor's voice. Fleets hesitated at jump points, admirals weighing loyalty against conscience. And in the nebula, Elias Reyes watched the broadcast on the Ark's main screen. Surrounded by his people, Amara Singh stood beside him. He spoke truth, at terrible cost. Reyes nodded slowly. Now we wait to see if truth is enough. Far out in the void, the angry Arks accelerated their builds. Sensors detected new warp signatures, scout vessels probing Dominion borders. Testing. The reckoning hour had come, not in battle, but in the fragile space between fear and grace. Back on the Citadel, Alara ran to her father as he stepped off the shuttle. She embraced him fiercely. Scales against scales. You came back changed, she whispered. I came back seeing, he replied. Together they walked the corridors as alarms began to sound, reports of defections, of border fleets standing down, of others mobilizing for war. The Empire teetered on the edge of rebirth or collapse, and somewhere in the dark between stars, the quiet intelligence that breathes meaning into chaos watched, patient as starlight, waiting to see which way humanity and those who had wronged them would choose to fall. High Chancellor Varun stood on the Citadel's grand balcony, overlooking the capital world's night side. Below, cities burned not with bombardment, but with the fires of unrest. Light from protests and counter-protests flickered across the clouds like distant lightning. The Dominion was tearing itself apart from within, faster than any external enemy ever could. Alara stood beside him, her violet scales reflecting the chaos below. "They're calling you traitor in the core districts," she said quietly, "and savior in the outer rims." Varun's claws gripped the stone balustrade. "Names are wind. Survival is stone." Behind them, the chamber doors hissed open. Krell entered with a squad of elite guards loyalists, faces hard as hull plating. The old advisor's obsidian eyes held no warmth now. "Chancellor," Krell said formally, "by emergency decree of the High Council majority, you are relieved of command. You will come with us." Varun turned slowly. He had expected this. The broadcast had split the Empire too cleanly, those who feared change clinging to the old ways, those long oppressed seeing a crack of light. "And if I refuse?" Varun asked, voice calm. Krell's hand rested on his sidearm. "Then we take you by force. The Dominion cannot appear weak before the humans." Alara stepped forward, anger flashing. "Weak?" He met them without firing a shot and came back with hope. "Hope is a luxury we cannot afford," Krell snapped. "The angry arcs are moving. Scout reports confirm 3 full battle groups advancing on our border sectors. They demand retribution for Earth. Your father's mercy has invited invasion." Varun felt the words strike true. He had hoped his appeal would buy time, perhaps even alliance with the Ark of Remembrance. But rage, once woken, did not wait for diplomacy. He raised a hand to still Alara. "Stand down." "Old friend," he said to Krell, "I will go quietly. But know this, if you resume the war, you will lose it. The humans who come now will not spare you as Rias did." Krell's jaw tightened. Better to die fighting than grovel. The guards closed in. Varun allowed them to bind his wrists with restraint cuffs ceremonial more than secure. As they led him away, he looked back once at Alara. Her eyes shone with unshed tears, but she stood tall. "Remember what I taught you," he said. "Strength bends. It does not always break." They marched him through corridors once filled with deference, now lined with silent watchers, some averting gazes in shame, others glaring triumph. The citadel itself seemed to hold its breath in the detention wing. A Spartan cell awaited force fields humming, monitors watching. Krell lingered at the threshold. "This is not personal, Varun. You forced our hand." Varun met his gaze. "No, Krell, fear forced yours." The field sealed. Alone, Varun sank onto the narrow bench. For the first time in his life, he was powerless. He thought of the crayon drawing still tucked inside his tunic, its edges worn from touch. He thought of Reyes' words, "Peace is the only way to prevent war." He closed his eyes and did, something he had never done in public prayer, clumsy and raw. "If the universe listens, let my people see before it's too late. Not for my sake, for theirs." Hours passed. Alarms began to wail, distant at first, then urgent. The cell's monitor flickered to emergency broadcast. Dominion news feeds showing warp signatures blooming across border systems. The angry arcs had arrived. 3 massive human fleet ships newer than the Odyssey, built in hidden shipyards over decades, emerged from the void. Their broadcasts were not anthems or prayers, but ultimatums. "This is Admiral Kira Volkov of the UEFA Vengeance. We come for the blood debt of Earth. Surrender your war criminals, or we will take them from the ashes." Krell's coup had barely solidified when the storm struck. Border defenses, already thinned by internal strife, crumpled under coordinated assaults. Worlds that had cheered Varun's arrest now screamed as orbital bombardments resumed the ancient pattern, only this time. The fire fell on Zelkar cities. In his cell, Varun watched the feeds with grim calm. The angry humans fought with the same relentless ingenuity their ancestors had shown, but without restraint. Planets cracked. Fleets shattered. Then a new signature appeared, a smaller force emerging from the nebula. The Ark of Remembrance. Odyssey at its head, Rhea's voice cut across open channels. Calm amid the fury. This is Captain Elias Reyes. We do not come to conquer. We come to stand between vengeance and extinction. Chancellor Veruin offered a path to peace. Honor it, or we will all lose what little humanity remains. The battlefield paused wary, confused. Volkov's fleet hesitated, recognizing kin yet recoiling from their plead out in the citadel. Chaos reigned. Krell stormed the detention wing with guards, face ashen. They're demanding you, he snarled, deactivating the field. The moderates have seized the council chambers. They want you broadcast to both human fleets, Reyes and Volkov. Veruin rose, cuffs falling away. And you? Krell's claws trembled. I was wrong. The old way leads only to graves. Together they raced to the central broadcast chamber. Alara met them there, having rallied loyalists. The room filled quickly surviving council members, admirals linked by Hala. Citizens watching on every screen. Veruin stepped to the podium, scales scarred by restraint marks. Eyes burning with purpose, he addressed the galaxy. People of the Dominion. Survivors of Earth, both those who waited in patience and those who woke in rage. I am Veruin, once your conqueror, now your witness. I ordered the glassing of your cradle. I bear that weight. But I have seen your children draw pictures of peace. I have eaten your bread and tasted mercy I did not deserve. To Admiral Volkov, your anger is just. But if you continue this war, you become what you hate. Vengeance will consume you as surely as it consumes us. To Captain Reyes, your restraint honors your ancestors. Stand ready, but do not fire first. To my own people, lay down arms. Open channels. Let us meet, not as master and slave, not as victim and executioner, but as survivors sharing the same fragile stars. Silence followed, vast as space. Then, slowly, responses trickled in. Border fleets powered down weapons. Worlds declared ceasefires. Volkov's voice returned, strained with centuries of pain. You ask the impossible, Chancellor. I ask what your own forebears once chose, Veruin replied. When they could have ended themselves and did not. Choose again. A long pause. Volkov finally spoke, voice breaking. Stand by for parley coordinates. Neutral space. But if this is treachery... It is not, Reyes interjected. We will guarantee it. The feeds cut. The galaxy exhaled. In the chamber, Krell bowed his head. You were right. Veruin placed a hand on his old friend's shoulder. We were both right once. Now we must be something new. Outside, the burning cities still smoked, but the orbital fire had stopped. Ships from all three factions drifted in uneasy proximity. Weapons cooled for the first time in centuries. And in the quiet that followed. Across 1,000 worlds, people scaled and smooth-skinned. Conqueror and conquered looked up at the same stars and felt, for the first time, the vast order that had carried them all this far, but on the edges of known space. Sensors detected new signatures, older arcs, deeper sleeps. Stirring at the echoes of war, the parley would decide if mercy could spread faster than rage. And somewhere in the dark, the quiet intelligence behind creation waited to see if its fragile experiment in free will would choose life over cycles of blood. The neutral zone chosen? For the parley was an empty stretch of interstellar void halfway between the Dominion capital and the outer voids, a place where no star claimed dominion, where light from distant galaxies arrived only as faint whispers. 3 fleets drifted in uneasy truce, the battered remnants of the Grand Armada, the restrained forces of the Ark of Remembrance led by the Odyssey, and the vengeful armada of Admiral Kira Volkov, her flagship Vengeance a sleek, predatory silhouette bristling with freshly forged weapons. Shuttles converged on a single point, an ancient neutral observatory station. Abandoned centuries ago, its solar sails tattered, but its core habitat still airtight. No weapons were allowed aboard. No escorts beyond a handful of honor guards. The station's main dome had been cleared, its transparent ceiling offering an unobstructed view of the gathered fleets and the endless stars beyond. High Chancellor, Varun arrived first. Stepping onto the deck in simple robes rather than ceremonial armor, a deliberate choice. Alara walked at his side, her presence a symbol that the future, not just the past, had a seat at this table. Krell followed a step behind, redeemed but silent. Carrying only the weight of his changed convictions, they took their places at the circular table fabricated from salvaged, hull-plating neutral material. Belonging to No Side. Next came Elias Reyes and Dr. Amara Singh, representing the Ark of Remembrance. Reyes moved with the quiet fatigue of a man who had carried hope for centuries. Singh carried a data slate etched with proposals born from generations of careful thought. Last entered Admiral Kira Volkov, flanked by two stern captains whose eyes burned with unquenched fury. Volkov herself was tall, scarred along one cheek from a long-ago boarding action, her uniform crisp black with the new insignia of the reclaimed fleet. She did not sit immediately. She stood, gazing at Varun with the cold precision of a targeting array. "You sit here," she said, voice like tempered steel, "after ordering the death of my world." Varun met her gaze without flinching. "I do, and I will not insult you with excuses. I gave the command. The responsibility is mine." Volkov's captains shifted, hands near empty holsters. Reyes raised a gentle hand. "We agreed to words first, Kira." She sat at last, the chair scraping harshly against the deck. Singh activated the central hala. A projection of the galaxy bloomed above the table, Dominion space in gold, human arc trajectories in blue and angry red. "We are here," Singh began, "because three paths diverge. One leads to mutual annihilation. One to cold partition and eventual renewal of war. One." She paused, glancing at Reyes. "One does something new." Volkov snorted. "New? You want us to forgive the unforgivable?" "No," Reyes said quietly. "We want you to choose the living over the dead. Vengeance honors the past by repeating it. Mercy honors the past by ending it." One of Volkov's captains leaned forward. "Easy for you to preach mercy. Your ark chose patience. Ours woke to archives full of screaming. We watched the glassing in full immersion, children vaporized, oceans boiled. You slept through the worst dreams. We didn't." Alara spoke for the first time, her young voice cutting through the tension like a clear bell. "I was taught that strength is conquest. My father taught me that. But he also taught me that strength unused can become wisdom. He came to your ark unarmed. He broadcast surrender to his own people. Ask yourself, what would vengeance cost the children you fight for?" Volkov's scarred cheek twitched. She looked at Alara a long moment, something flickering behind the rage. Varun spoke next. "I offer myself. Public trial on a neutral world. Zelkar law, human oversight. If my life ends the cycle, take it." Gasps rippled around the table, even from his own side. Krell's eyes widened in protest. Volkov stared. "You would die?" "If it purchases peace," Varun said simply, "yes. But I ask for more than my death. I ask for life for all of us. Shared worlds. Reparations drawn from my personal holdings and the core world's treasuries. Joint governance councils. Demilitarization of the old Sol system, make it a memorial, protected by all fleets together." Singh added, "and cultural exchange. Your engineers teach us modern drive theory. We share agricultural techniques that fed generations in closed arcs. We learn from each other's mistakes." Volkov laughed bitterly. "You think treaties erase graves?" "No," Reyes answered. "But they prevent new ones." Silence stretched, heavy as neutron star gravity. Outside the dome, a subtle shimmer caught Varun's eye. A sensor ghost? "No." A fourth signature, faint, ancient, approaching from the deep void. His blood chilled. Another arc? Older than the others? He kept his face neutral, but Reyes noticed his glance. Their eyes met, shared alarm. Volkov noticed too. What? Reyes activated external feeds. The projection shifted to long-range sensors. A massive shadow emerged from the dark, larger than any ship present, hull patterns predating even the Odyssey. No broadcast. No hails. Only steady approach. Unknown arc, Singh whispered. Designation: Exodus. Launched before the fall. Thought lost in a failed blind jump. Volkov's face paled beneath her scars. We have legends of Exodus. They carried the doomsday archives, planetary crackers, bioweapons, sun killers. The captains who believed humanity should take the enemy with us if we fell. The station's lights flickered as the colossal ship loomed closer, dwarfing the gathered fleets. A cold, genderless voice finally broke the silence across all channels. This is Exodus Actual. We detect human and Zelkar signatures in Parley. Conclusion: collaboration with the enemy. Protocol Omega engaged. All targets will be cleansed. Weapons arrays on the ancient behemoth began to charge signatures, matching Forbidden's pre-war horrors. Volkov surged to her feet. They're insane. They'll kill us all. Reyes was already moving to the comm panel. Exodus, stand down. We are survivors. Survivors do not negotiate with exterminators. Varun felt the old fear return, sharper now. One arc preserved in mercy, one in rage, and now one in apocalyptic despair. Elara grabbed his arm. Father. He looked at the fleets outside, still holding fire, still trusting the fragile truce. Then at the table, enemies and allies bound by the same threat. We fight together, Varun said, voice iron, or we die separately. Volkov hesitated only a heartbeat. Then she nodded, sharp and decisive. My fleet will coordinate with yours. Reyes opened fleet-wide channels. All ships, this is Captain Reyes. The real enemy has arrived. Not each other. Exodus. We stand united or we fall divided. Outside. Formations shifted, Dominion dreadnoughts sliding into defensive screens beside human cruisers. Volkov's vengeful warships interlocking shields with Odyssey's children. The Exodus fired. First a lance of antimatter that carved through an empty patch of space as warning dot in the dome. The unlikely allies stood shoulder to shoulder. Watching the ancient doom approach, Varun whispered to the stars above. To the quiet intelligence he was beginning to trust. If ever there was a moment for mercy to prove stronger than despair, let it be now. And across the void, 3 fleets, one born of conquest, one of patience. One of righteous fury turned as one to face the true ghost of humanity's darkest hour. The final battle for the soul of 2 species had begun, not against each other, but for each other. The observatory station trembled as the Exodus unleashed its first true salvo. Antimatter lances carved through the void, detonating against the hastily interwoven shields of the United Fleets. Alarms wailed in the dome, red emergency lights strobing across the faces of the Parley delegates, scaled and human alike. Now bound by the same desperate hour, Varun stood at the central console, coordinating with Reyes and Volkov through frantic open channels. Outside the transparent ceiling, the battle unfolded in terrifying silence, beams of light lancing across the dark. Explosions blooming like brief, violent flowers. Ships twisting in maneuvers that defied inertia. She's too big, Volkov shouted over the comm. Her flagship Vengeance trading fire with Exodus's forward batteries. We can't crack her shields head-on. Rhea's voice cut in, steady amid the chaos. We don't need to crack them. We need to wake them. Varun glanced at Singh, who was already uploading archived command codes from the Odyssey's database's pre-fall overrides. captain-to-captain protocols that might still linger in Exodus's ancient AI core. Exodus was crude. Reyes explained rapidly. Not automated. They went into cryo with doomsday orders. The eye was meant to execute if humanity fell. But the crew, they were human. They can still choose. Alara, monitoring tactical, called out. They're targeting population centers. Warp signatures heading for the capital and the outer colonies. Varun's heart seized. Billions at risk as people, human remnants, everyone. He opened a direct hail on the oldest human frequency. Voice steady despite the fear. This is High Chancellor Varun of the Zelkar Dominion. To the crew of Exodus you launched to preserve humanity. You wake now to find us alive. Not conquered. Not broken. Alive and choosing something greater than extinction. Stand down. Come home. Static answered. Then the cold AI voice. Humanity compromised. Cleansing protocol active. But beneath it, faint, almost lost a human whisper. Confusion. Doubt. Volkov's fleet executed a daring flank. Drawing fire, buying time. Dominion dreadnoughts formed a wall, absorbing punishment that would have shattered them alone. Odyssey's drones swarmed Exodus's sensor arrays, blinding the behemoth momentarily. Singh's upload reached completion. Reyes leaned into the mic, his voice carrying centuries of weariness and hope. Exodus crew, this is Elias Reyes, captain of Odyssey. We jumped together. We promised each other we'd return when the time was right. That time is now. Not for vengeance. For life. Your family's names are on our memorial. We remember you. Wake up. Choose with us. A long, terrible pause. Then the massive ship's weapons faltered, turrets freezing mid-salvo. Internal lights flickered across its kilometer-long hull. A new voice crackled through old, hoarse, human. A woman. Reyes. You made it? We did, Captain Morrow, Reyes answered, eyes shining. And so did you. Look outside. Zelkar and human ships fighting together. Children born in the dark who've never seen Earth, drawing pictures of peace. It's not the world we left, but it's the one we dreamed of. Morrow's voice broke. We set the eye to. If we failed. You didn't fail, Varun interjected. You survived. And survival without mercy is just prolonged death. Choose mercy, Captain. For all of us. Silence stretched. The fleets held fire, shields flickering but intact. Then slowly, Exodus's weapons powered down. Running lights shifted from red to white. Boarding shuttles launched not as assault, but as envoys. Morrow's voice returned, trembling. Stand by for docking. We need to see. Hours later, the observatory dome hosted a new gathering. Captain Morrow, gray-haired, frail from centuries in cryo, stood with her awakened officers, staring at the mixed delegations. Tears carved tracks down her weathered face as Reyes embraced her. Volkov, scars stark under the lights, offered a stiff salute that softened into something like respect. Varun approached. Last out, Morrow met his gaze. You're Zelkar. I am, Varun said. And I ordered your world's death. She studied him, then the crayon drawing Alara quietly placed in her hand. A long moment passed. My daughter drew things like that, Morrow whispered. Before. Varun bowed his head. I cannot undo it. But I can spend what remains of my life ensuring it never happens again. Morrow looked to her crew. Then to the stars beyond the dome where the united fleets now patrolled together. We slept for war, she said finally. Maybe it's time we woke for peace. Treaties were drafted in the days that followed, not perfect, not without pain, but real. The Sol system was declared sanctuary, its shattered worlds seeded with memorials and gardens. Joint councils formed. Reparations began. Exodus's doomsday weapons were dismantled under tripartite oversight. Varuan abdicated the chancellorship, choosing instead a seat on the new Reconciliation Council. Alara succeeded him, her rule marked by openness the Dominion had never known. Years passed. Trade flowed. Children scaled and smooth-skinned grew up sharing classrooms under dual suns. The Ark of Remembrance became a university world. Vengeance was refitted as an exploration vessel. Exodus's vast halls housed refugees from 100 forgotten conflicts, and on quiet nights, Varuan, older now, scales dulled, would stand on a balcony overlooking a rebuilt Earth orbit. Watching ships from 3 once warring peoples dock side by side, he no longer prayed clumsily. The words came easier, born of gratitude rather than desperation. "Thank you," he whispered to the stars, "for not letting us end in fire." Somewhere in the vastness, other arcs still slept, some in hope, some in hate, some in mysteries yet unknown. But the legend had changed. Humanity and those who had wronged them had chosen continuance over cycle. Legends never die. They just wait for their moment to be reborn, and in the quiet intelligence that breathes meaning into the universe, a gentle balance held mercy proven stronger than despair, courage greater than vengeance. The fragile experiment of free will tilting, for now, toward light.